wanted to make this video before I got tired. So I'm making this like right after I got off work. Like literally, I just got home. The other day, my sister asked me like when my moment of consciousness was. Like, I guess this is a trend happening where people are talking about the moment of consciousness when they realized that they were people and alive and that their parents had names and stuff like that. And she asked me when my moment was, and I told her that I honestly don't remember a lot of our childhood, probably younger than maybe 8 or 10, maybe. I might have like little memories, and sometimes I'll have like little flashbacks, or I'll smell something and have a sudden memory, or she'll say something and it'll trigger a memory because she's my older sister, so of course. And then we started talking about some of the things that happened in our childhood that was kind of like scary and maybe a little bit traumatic and a little bit crazy. And I was like, that could be why I don't remember some stuff. You know, have you ever like had a friend, or you are that friend, where you'll say something that happened to you in your childhood that was kind of traumatic to you, but you say it as a joke, and then everybody around you looks at you like you're crazy? I'm that friend, and my sister is that person too. A memory that I do have that I don't know how old I was, and it's a very vague memory, was that we had a schnauzer, or not a schnauzer, he was, I don't remember what kind of dog he was, but his name was Shang, because my sister and I were obsessed with Mulan. And I remember our next door neighbor in apartments stole our dog, and I can't remember the reason why, but I remember she stole our dog, and my sister and my stepbrother at the time and I snuck into her apartment and stole our dog back. Like, it was some serious like covert Metal Gear Solid shit. And I remember the back of her couch was like one of those weird velvet floral pattern couches, and it had a huge hole in it. And I'm not sure if it's a real memory, I have to ask my sister when she comes home, but one of us hid inside of the couch and we stole the dog back, and she didn't see us. And like, I wish I remember why she stole the dog, but I do remember her stealing the dog and being really sad about it and then breaking into her apartment. Other fun things that happened to me when I was a kid was I almost drowned twice. My sister and I used to visit our grandparents in California a lot, and they had a pool in their backyard, and my sister and I love swimming. Swimming is one of my favorite things to do. And I remember it was my sister and I, and we were being babysat by this woman, and I can't remember who she is, but she being babysat by this woman, and I couldn't swim in the deep end. I could walk around in the shallow end, but I didn't know how to swim quite yet. And so at some point, this woman, I guess, was trying to teach me the hard way to swim, and she threw me into the deep end, and I basically almost drowned. If my sister wasn't there to save me, I would have drowned. And I remember getting pulled out of the water by my sister, and my dad being so livid. I swear he could have killed her, and then I never saw her again. On the second occasion of almost drowning this was my fault. I still couldn't swim very well, and my sister and my cousins were in the deep end, and I was in the shallow end by myself. And you know, they were kind of like, it was like when little kids are young and they want to leave their little sibling over there and hang out with the older kids. It was kind of like that. And I decided I wanted to go and hang out with them, and I walked over to the deep end and then walked more and then sank and almost drowned again. And my sister saved my life again. So if it wasn't for my sister, I probably would have died. Like, I know that it is a practice that sometimes people will just throw you in the deep end and hope that you will swim, but for some people that doesn't happen. For some people, they just sink and almost die. So yeah, it's a wonder that I'm not afraid of swimming, because I love to swim and I'm a very good swimmer, but that occasion could have made me afraid of water, and I'm really glad that it didn't. These last two things that I'm going to talk about are actually quite scary and traumatic, and I don't think they were to me as a kid, but as an adult, it explains a lot. So the first one, the second to last, was my sister and I went to the same elementary school for a little bit. She was going into the 5th grade and I was going into the 2nd grade. It was in 2001, and the reason I remember the date is because I looked it up recently to make sure that this was a real memory. We went to the same school. It was called Lincoln Elementary here in Ogden, and it was a round school, and we had a really cool teacher that was short and had short hair and small glasses. She was teeny tiny, and she had taught other people that we knew. And I remember waking up the next day to reports that the school had burned down. And we found out later that someone had poured flammable liquids around the school and lit the school on fire. Which, first of all, the school being round is a stupid shape because that just made the fire travel. But it's also really scary to think that someone lit the school on fire on purpose. And it's lucky that they did it in the middle of the night around 2 a.m. because they could have done it when there were kids in school. Like, they were kids, there could have been kids in the school. Like, when I think about that as an adult, this person was deranged enough to light the school on fire in the first place. And they could have done it at any time. They chose to do it at night. But what if they chose to do it when people in school is in session? But I remember my sister was really upset because a lot of the animals died in this fire. There were animals that we were taking care of, and all the animals died in the fire, and a lot of equipment died. I remember my sister was really upset about the turtles and the iguanas that died in the fire. And then I remember having to go to another school nearby called Edison Elementary, and this school already had a full student body, but then a whole other school's student body had to go to this school, and the portables weren't damaged, so they had to use the portables to make it so we could still get like an education and still go to school. And that's wild to me. Like, I wasn't sure if that was a real memory until we were talking about these things that happened in our childhood, and I was like, or the school that burned down, the round school that burned down. And then the more that my sister talked about it, because she was older than me, the more the memories came back. And it's wild to think about. And they rebuilt the school in 2003, and it's standing now. But it's crazy to think that we went to that school and school was literally starting. We were about to go into fifth and second grade, and then someone decided to burn our school down. And that's scary to me as an adult because we could have been in school at the time. Like, of course this happened at 2 a.m., but what if the person decided that they wanted to light the school up when school was in? And that's crazy to think about. And actually also thinking about other school memories. When I was in high school, I was taking night classes, so I was at home at the time, but I woke up to these messages from all of my friends and like newscastings about a bomb threat happening at my high school. And what's really scary about that is that I was friends with the kid that made the threat, and I was friends with the girl that warned the school because he warned her about bombs being set around the school. And I remember they went to his house and into his room, and they found stuff that you can make with pipe bombs and other types of bombs. And I was friends with this person. I think that was lightning. But I was friends with this person. Me and my best friend, we were friends with this person that made these threats. And that is terrifying to me. Like, yeah, I was taking night classes and technically I wasn't there, but the fact that that happened when I was in high school and my friends were going to school during the day, and like we literally, the school was in our backyard. Like it took me 2 minutes to walk to school. And like, it's crazy when I think about that luckily nothing happened, nobody got hurt, and that girl was brave enough to speak up, but it could have gone a completely different direction. And that's crazy to think about that happened. Last one is kind of scary, but also kind of badass. So when my sister and I were really young, we lived with my mom, and my mom had to run to the store, and she had left oil on our gas stove and forgot to turn the stove off because she's like, you know, we live with her. She's got 2 daughters. We're both really young. She was also a CNA at the time. You know, mistakes happen. And so she quickly ran to the gas station down the street. At some point in between that, the oil had fallen onto the gas stove. Meanwhile, my sister and I are in the living room. We're watching Dragon Tales, and I remember this so clearly. Both of us are watching Dragon Tales, and I remember seeing smoke come across the screen and thinking it wasn't real or thinking it was part of the show, and then seeing smoke come from the kitchen. And my sister gets up and goes into the kitchen and just yells, "Fire!" And I run out the front door. She runs out the back door with our dog. I believe I was either not wearing pants or I was wearing like shorts. And I remember our neighbor lady came out with her son and she put pajama pants on me, and then her son handed me the phone to call 911, which, like, I can't remember how young I was, but like also like there's a fire. And I remember so clearly this phone was one of those clear phones in the 90s where you can see the inside. I remember dropping it and breaking the phone, and this lady trying to quickly put clothes on me because it was cold, and eventually my sister calls 911. My mom comes back and she sees that we're outside and that there's fire and there's smoke and the fire alarm going off. My mother, this is one of the most badass memories I have of my mom. I have so many, but this one sticks out to me. This woman went to apartment by apartment, and outside each apartment, because it wasn't an inside door apartment, it was where the doors were outside. I don't know what kind of apartment that is, but there's fire extinguishers next to each door for safety reasons. My mom went to each one and punched the glass in with her fists, took out the extinguisher, and started putting the fire out by herself. By the time the firefighters got to our apartment, she put out most of the fire. She did most of the work. And I remember the firefighters got there and she stopped, you know, doing it and let them do their job, and her knuckles and her hands were bloody because she was punching in this glass to get to the fire extinguisher so she could put the fire out. And I remember her telling me when we got older was that she felt so much shame because she left the oil on the stove and forgot the stove was on, and that we had to go through this traumatic thing. And I told her, yeah, it was scary and it was traumatic. Mistakes happen, especially when, you know, you're kind of like not a single parent, because my parents are divorced, but they co-parented. But like I'd live with my mom and then I'd stay with my dad, you know, but she was by herself and she was a CNA, and, you know, things happen. But also seeing her punch this glass in, take care of business, and put most of this fire out was one of the most badass things I've ever seen. And that is the memory that I have of that. Now, granted, of course, and my mom is like this, my sister's like this, and I'm like this, is whenever we smell smoke of any kind, especially if something's burning, it gives us anxiety now. Whenever I smell smoke nearby, whenever I smell heat, like especially coming off a straightener or a stove, electrical heat, I get nervous because of it, because that was scary. I can smell it from a mile away. The burners, like the old timey like lantern burners, I don't like the smell of it because it reminds me of that happening. Because when I think about it as an adult, it was quite traumatizing seeing our house, like literally fire coming out of the kitchen and the smoke, and watching my mom do this badass thing but go into the fire, and thinking about what could have happened with that. And it's really scary. And I remember my sister and I being so upset that our Disney blankets and our Halloween candy got burned, and that's what we were thinking about as kids. As an adult, it's like my sister and I are so lucky that we got out of that apartment and that we were okay. I do question the logic of the lady and her son handing me the telephone to call 911 and my sister calling 911 when we were children and they were adults. But you know, but that's probably one of the most traumatic memories that I've got other than drowning. I remember that was really scary. But that was traumatic, might be a little dramatic, but it was very scary, and now fire does give me anxiety. But it's also one of the most badass memories that I have of my mom. So there were some wild things that happened in my childhood that were kind of scary, kind of traumatic, really have stuck with me, and that are just wild, like absolutely wild. And I'm sure compared to some people's childhoods, it's not that crazy and traumatic and wild, and to some people it really is. But I've had some things happen in my life that were really scary and really crazy, and like when I think about them, it's like that checks. That explains some things, you know? That explains some stuff in there. I would love to hear like crazy stories from your childhood, that things that happened to you when you were a kid that you just like didn't realize because you were a kid was really traumatic and scary and crazy, but as an adult you're like, how am I alive? Because like that's a conversation I had with my boyfriend, was some of the crazy shit we do as kids, like climbing really high up in trees, jumping off of roofs, swing sets, and you'd swing high enough to where you'd flip off of it. And then thinking about as an adult, hell no. I climb up a high flight of stairs and I get wibbly wobbly in my knees because we're up high. Like, on the top of a roof? Hell no, as an adult. Like, how am I still here? And then I think about some of the things that happened in my life, and then I realize I'm so lucky to be here, and there are worse things that could have happened, but damn, us talking about our childhoods and the things that happened really triggered a lot of memories. And so if you want to hear more, let me know. I'd love to hear yours, but we're losing light. My foot is falling asleep. I'm also hungry. And I need to get changed because I have work clothes underneath this hoodie and I need to change. But yeah, crazy. But that's about it. Thank you for listening to me ramble about some of the crazy, wild, scary, and slightly traumatic things that happened in my childhood. Life is crazy. Life is just, and you know, the crazy, wild, scary, trauma, happy, amazing things keep coming. I don't think that changes no matter how old you are. And you just have a different perspective as an adult because each day we're closer to death and we're more aware of it. But yeah, I'm gonna go. So go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you so desire. Hit the subscribe button if you would like to, and hit the bell notification so you can be notified whenever I post. And I hope that you have a wonderful day and a beautiful night. And this is Kat signing off. Bye.